Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. We'd like to thank you for joining us. This will be our final show of 2020. Goodbye to this year. And as you can tell from the hats, it's slightly holiday themed, wrap up themed. We had hoped to have Caleb with us, and Caleb is with us on the chat, but because of some technical difficulties, you won't be seeing his handsome face. But he's here in spirit and here in words, and he will definitely be contributing as we go along. So, how you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah.
It's the year's almost over. I'm so excited to get into 2021, and I'm just, really hoping there's no massive surprises coming in the next.
I don't know. I don't know how best to wear the hat.
I have my headphones holding mine, but I like it kind of hanging down.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying. I'm trying not to read like legal analysis of from Lawrence Lessig about alternate electors, and then I'm trying to just not even. But
I did big time flip flops in law school about some of Lessig's works.
Really,
the writings, yeah. Particularly on the public domain. Like I had gone in thinking like free, and then came out with a completely different perspective and was advocating for the institution of a supermark, which basically certain properties would have protections in perpetuity because companies sometimes are very good landlords with let's not talk about this. Stupid. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, we lost our other lawyer to start talking about intellectual property law.
He'd probably be going, ooh. But I was also wondering with you guys, like, how are you treating Christmas? Is this because for us it's just a little weird. Like, we're not getting Christmas cards out. The only thing we're doing is if somebody sends us one, we're sending one back. We have enough for that. But this is like, and it's not exactly bah humbug, but it's more like,
Well, for Brandon and I, we just moved clear across the country, so this will be our first Christmas in a new home. Also, first Christmas we've been together like one or two Christmases, kind of, but as a sort of family here. But it's just weird variations on tradition and subdued. Like I'm working next week. Trump gave federal employees Christmas Eve off, so that's nice. Yay! Thank you, Donald Trump. You'll never hear me say those words again. But yeah, it is definitely subdued. We'll just take it easy, enjoy whatever, and yeah.
I mean, we're pretty much the same. This will be the first year where we won't be seeing any family for like the days around Christmas. I mean, last year and the year before, we spent Christmas here in our house. The first 2 years ago, it was because our cat passed away on Christmas Eve. We had to put him down, unfortunately, Paolo, and so we didn't feel like doing anything. And then last year we just we started a new tradition of Christmas Day movies, which we were hoping to continue this year, which we are, but at home, because there is one massive release that is coming out on Christmas Day that we're really excited about.
Yeah, we thought we were going to start a Christmas Eve tradition with last year. We went to see Cats, and bless the night of the virgin birth, and we go see Cats. And, maybe we'll reignite that next year. But it was strange, like getting out like for the time that would be heading towards midnight mass, and it was the end of the movie. It was a strange experience, but maybe something that we'll reinstitute at some point. I think everyone who's wired like us, or at least 95% of us, will be Wonder Woman 1984ing on Christmas Day. And maybe I'm thinking maybe Christmas Eve watch the first Wonder Woman, because just as kind of a preamble. I don't think Justice League or Batman v Superman are necessarily required, but that might be like a good way of getting in the mood.
In the mood.
Yeah.
For one,
yeah, so we're getting rid of this year. It's got to be better. It's like 2021 has got to be better than this. Yeah. So
yeah.
So for this show, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about comics that we're reading currently, and then we're also going to go around the table here and talk about what we thought our favorite book was for 2020. Not getting, I know in previous years we've talked about our favorite writer, favorite artist, favorite project outside of comics. We're kind of whittling that down this year and just talking about our favorite series. So there's a lot of news that's hit, especially with DC, with the announcements of some of the teams that are going to be shepherding the books next year. Steve, do you have any kind of compilation of that, or?
I don't. I've just been kind of, glomming on to some of the news the past couple of days. Obviously, one of the big, there's been a couple big things with, of course, the announcement of who's taking over Superman in Action Comics, and then, of course, Justice League. So, the new Justice League that's popping up next year. I know we're kind of all on pause with the storylines that are kind of wrapping up towards the end of the year. I think DC did a really smart thing by ending everything in December, bringing up future states starting in January, February to kind of like cleanse people's palates, and then going into new books in March, which we started seeing the announcements from those over the past couple of days. So I'm not too familiar with the gentleman who is taking over for Superman in Action Comics. I know Caleb was.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I knew was The Last God, and that just wasn't something that was in my wheelhouse. He's a very interesting background.
I love the fact that a music educator is going to be writing a comic. I cannot tell you. I'm sure there's been at least one. But a former, I was going to school for music education at one point in my life. A former and was a band nerd through and through. That does warm my heart. I have no idea about how he is as a writer, but I'm interested. I'll check it out. Though I'm sad about Bendis moving on, though not far. It sounds like.
Yeah. And as the news broke today, and it hasn't even been officially confirmed, but it basically has been that he will be the writer for Justice League, and a pretty interesting team that they have lined up with some of the stalwarts, Superman, Batman. They have Black Canary and Green Arrow in the picture, Hawkgirl, Naomi. With the theory that she will actually be getting a superhero name. For me, the biggest surprise was Hippolyta instead of Wonder Woman on the team. And
that's
I think Aquaman is in the back there too. I wish I had the picture there. And also a figure who is either Shazam or Black Adam. So
either one.
Yeah, so it's an interesting lineup, and I know there's a lot of Bendis bashing left and right, but I do think one of Bendis's big strengths is team books. There's what he did with Avengers was a huge revitalization.
There we go.
Yeah, there's Aquaman. I was right.
404 is also a new
really quick
book that we're really excited about.
Where he came in and say, Spider-Man and Wolverine are two of your biggest characters. Why aren't they on the biggest team? And was able to fashion it in a way that made sense. And
there we go.
I'm really excited about Justice League. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is that David Marquez on art?
Yeah, that's Marquez.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So, but I'm pretty intrigued about what's coming down the pipe for DC. Marvel, I don't know too much about what's going on there. I do know, obviously, the Black King, I think, is going to be taking a couple months worth of time at least to resolve itself into the new year. So that's probably going to change everything for the Marvel Universe yet again. So we'll see.
Do you mean King in Black?
King in Black, that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they just got done with Empire, and before that was what was the other one? The other Avengers centric.
Oh, the one with Thor and all the
Thor, the War of the Gods, War of the Realms. Yeah, so I mean, there's been some pretty heavy hitting, monumental Marvel Universe events, but if it's not X-Men, I'm not interested. So that's just me.
Yeah, so we got
go
a
ahead.
Couple comments.
Sure.
James here, Hippolyta has been on JLA before, but I guess the design is sort of similar to an alternate Wonder Woman from Planetary.
Yeah, that was during Morrison's run that Hippolyta was on the expansion team.
And then Philip Kennedy Johnson from Last Sons of America, which was a book.
I think he means Boom.
Boom. That would make more sense. Yeah.
Book.
One of the best comic book bears things ever associated with us. Steve, I don't think you were around, but Bryan was. Remember when I got those cards ready and it was supposed to say gay guys and it said the gay gays?
So gay. They're the gay gays.
To all of us, right?
They're the gay gays.
The extra gays.
Caleb says that Daniel Warren Johnson's giving us a Beta Ray Bill book. Mm-hmm. That's exciting, I think, for a lot of Beta Ray Bill fans.
But I gotta say, my Marvel pre-orders, they were down to Avengers and X-Men. I mean, that's how much they've retracted again.
Really?
And now that we don't have Ghost Spider and some other stuff.
John Runyon saying you have to wonder if Marvel villains have a schedule of when to strike, to not step on each other's toes. All the events,
it's seriously, it's like, it's the Kree Skrull Empire's turn. Let's wait until they're done, and then we'll bring in what's his face from the symbiotes. Caleb also reminded us of our wonderful Hit Potato from years past.
That's me.
Yes,
Hit Potato.
But he did mention Daniel Warren Johnson. I'm glad he did because I will be talking about Daniel Warren Johnson a little bit later on.
Okay.
So I might pick that book up, and I don't read Thor, and I might read a Beta Ray Bill book just because of the creator on it. So
yeah. With some of the other DC announcements, Green Arrow's team has been announced. There's been a few there. The one that I'm very excited about is Tom Taylor writing Nightwing. I'm super excited about that. If we can't have him on Superman or on Justice League, I'm okay with this. Apparently, Dick and Barbara are back together as a romantic couple. She's functioning more as Oracle from a lot of the material that's kind of been leaked. So I'm really psyched about that. If you could give me any book on DC, like for me to write, Nightwing would be it. And
really,
though I have characters that are far bigger favorites, he's up there for me. And I think it's because he's probably one of the few characters in the DC universe that everybody likes and everybody has a relationship with. I think Superman and Jay Garrick are kind of in that same bracket. And for me, it would effectively be the Brave and the Bold with Nightwing instead of Batman. Like so it'd just be a series of team ups, at least for a year. That would be my comic book dream of anything. Because I imagine Superman's a really hard character to write. Coming up with adversaries must be really hard. And there's other characters that though I love certain, I love Wally West, I'd never want to be in charge.
Well, I mean, the one of the things that popped up recently is the possible redemption of Wally West in the new year, which is good because he's had a pretty, to put it mildly, he's had a pretty shitty past 9 years, really. First he was gone for about 5 years, and then they brought him back and then screwed him up, and then he went to war and screwed up again. And I mean,
for so many people, he's their Flash. It's not Barry. For so many people, and I hope that they do give him a couple good days. Let's put it that way.
He's got. I mean,
I just wanted to ask you guys, because I know, Bryan, I know you've written something with Jeremy Owen, Steve. I don't know about you, but if just going on from my from what I had just said about Nightwing, if you guys were writing a book, what would be the book you would want to oversee? That's something I've never asked you. So
I don't have any good pitch ideas that I've that I've even thought more than a second about.
Yeah.
But in just characters, I would always want to write the X-Men, but I think it would be so hard and it'd be so impossible to please that if Hickman is doing an okay job at it, then I don't have any confidence that I would do better. But I would love to play with those toys,
Oh yeah, I mean, no, I totally get you with the X-Men. In fact, if Bendis hadn't done it, I would have loved to have an original X-Men lineup book again. Now, of course, he brought back the literal original X-Men as teenagers for several years, and then they went back. I loved the series, and I loved what he did with those characters. I know that's not always the most popular opinion, but I would have loved that, because those were the characters I fell in love with X-Men and X Factor back in the day, before they rejoined the greater X-Men X-Men teams with Gold and Blue back in the early 90s. But I mean, they were my good old go-to X-Men: Angel, Beast, Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Iceman. So
would you be more comfortable with them with their histories like X Factor was, with instead of the younger counterparts, with all the baggage they bring in?
Either way, I mean, it's really easy if you go back to a younger X-Men team, you can do away with all the history and just create something new. Or you could take those damaged, crazy people who have been through the future and through time doors and all sorts of stuff, and have them deal with their shit, but maybe just the 5 of them, and not have to deal with everybody else who just makes things more difficult.
I think taking Grant Morrison's approach to Batman, which is everything happened, even the TV shows, even the weird shit, and using that somehow in Marvel. And Marvel has always kind of been like that a little bit, more permissive of continuity shenanigans, right? But I don't know, taking a mid-level character who's not quite on the 4 and getting to play with them in that way and dig back into their heart, it's like what a lot of writers have done lately, taking C-list or D-list Marvel heroes or DC heroes and making them relevant. But I don't know. I think you'd have to focus on a core group of X-Men that aren't the 5, but at the same time, and I don't mean the new 5, I mean the original 5, OG 5. But that's also the way you die, is because you pick 5 obscure or some obscure, and unless you're what's his name, and you get the Mutant Academy Wolverine and the X-Men.
Jason Aaron,
who did that very well. He found a way to blend familiar faces with obscure other characters, and then telling kind of a new story, very successfully. I think, that's kind of where I would want to go. I think that's the best choice.
Going back to the original 5, were either you guys into X-Men: The Hidden Years, the book that Byrne had done in the late 90s?
I actually didn't read it, so no. And that was during the period that I stopped reading superhero comic books. Period. Was not into anything that was superhero related.
Again, it served as a link between what happened between X-Men number 66 and Giant Size X-Men number 1.
Yeah.
And there's one really touching issue with Warren and his mother, who's suffering from cancer. Really, really touching issue. There's other issues that are complete messes. But if you ever explore, if you have Marvel Unlimited at some point, maybe take a look at it, because I'd really be interested in your guys' opinions, because I know that you have affinity for these particular characters, and seeing a series that had a very specific agenda with these characters, I'd be interested in what your take would be on those.
If it was DC we're talking about, I would definitely write New Gods. I don't know that I would do it justice, but those are the toys in the DC world. Not only do I love them so much, but I also would want to do something really trippy and weird. Not the Tom King bring them into the real world, sort of like tell a different story through them, but go the other way and go full on weird Kirby shit. So
probably drawn by oh gosh, who's a great trippy artist?
Who's the one who did Godhead or God?
Tom Scaly.
Yeah, I would like that.
I mean, for DC, I would kind of go in the obscure direction, and nobody really liked them. But my first Legion, other than the Legion of the 30th century, was Legion 90 something or other. That kept changing. It was like Legion.
Yeah. Legion.
Legion.
Started as 88 and then just kept updating the year. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to do that, but maybe 100 years past that point. So definitely nowhere near the 30th century, but like still future compared to now, and see what happens, what you can do with sort of a intergalactic group of, well, really malcontents that I guess are, trying to help things, but really are terrible people. I would like to do something like that because it's weird, it's challenging, and you can do whatever the hell you want because there's really no impact continuity with for anybody else.
Yeah, so I guess it's there's an onus on me now to say the Marvel property I would want to write, and hands down, it's Hercules. Just because it's something that you could do grand epics, and at the same time you could have an issue where he goes to a shoe store, and there's so much humor and grandiose elements to that character. That he's a horn dog, I think is very, very appealing. That he has dipped his toes in both pools, I think is very appealing. And and I do think Incredible Hercules was a fantastic series. The ones subsequent to that I don't think were as effective, but there's a lot of different methods of interpreting the character and still remaining true to the character in the same series. So that would be my pick.
Would you pick the Hercules that's a little sexually fluid or
absolutely. Okay. Absolutely, because there's a lot of stories to tell there. What if one thing I and this is just something I always thought would be a great storyline is someone bisexual and they bang the sister, and then like 2 weeks later they bang the brother, but they don't know that they banged the sister and the brother, and and hijinks ensue.
Yeah. No, there's a lot you can do with that. Yeah. I like the idea of like really dialing back into his father, sort of the Zeusian influence and like that horn dog element, like you're talking about, shape shifting. I mean, that's not typically a Hercules power.
Plus, like his 12 labors, he did horrific stuff. According to mythology, and how do you reconcile that with this guy who's like more often than not kind of a goofball, at least for a demigod. So I just think I find him so much more fascinating than Thor, and we've been very lucky to have Jason Aaron on Thor. I mean, we've had a lot of great Thor stories over, I guess at this point it's like almost 10 years.
Story
2011, yeah. So Hercules would be my guy for the competition.
We got some notes here from James. Actually, referring both Bill to what you had mentioned about the Hidden Years X-Men. Apparently, Byrne's doing X-Men Elsewhen on his message boards, where he's doing X-Men fan comics. And it is possible at some point they might just become a series at Marvel, maybe a digital first series, or maybe they might give them another title again. Which be interesting.
If I could have Byrne on anything, remember when they were doing X-Men Forever and then they did New Mutants Forever, which was if they had him on Fantastic Four Forever, just another 12 issues of that, because I absolutely loved his Fantastic Four. That I would want to see more than any X-Men.
Yeah. I did not like Byrne when he was writing for Marvel. I know he did kind of go onto his what was that indie series that he did for a while, Next Men, for Dark Horse. That was okay, but obviously, he basically just like learned all the story lessons from X-Men and was like, what did I get to do for X-Men? Let me do that for my own title, which to me, I think didn't really work as well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I do think Byrne is better when he's challenged, and when he's specifically challenged by a co-creator. I don't think it's. I don't think this is a wrong statement in that Claremont was never as good as when he was writing with Byrne, and Byrne was never as good when he was drawing for Claremont. There was just a combination that worked, or worked for a particular period of time. Yeah. And I think you can say the same thing about Jack and Stan. Fantastic Four is with the possible exception of the first 38 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. I don't think Stan was ever as good as when he was with Jack. Yeah. With that caveat. Yeah.
I mean, you have those like Perez and Wolfman. I mean, whenever they worked on a book together, Titans. Oh. I mean, it was just like it was the best of whatever era that was. But yeah. No, those are some good suggestions.
Yeah, those are some good questions. We don't usually do that.
No.
Also, on the news front, I don't have the information in front of me, but that surprise book that came out from Kirkman and Ryan Ottley.
Yeah.
It was just like starting at number 16?
17.
17?
So number 17. And apparently there's going to be another release that's, again, one of those sort of like mid-numbered books that takes place in the same universe as well, that they're going to be coming out with in the next couple of months. Another surprise book.
From Kirkman and Skybound?
Yep, okay. Exactly. And it's part of that same universe.
There we go. Solid Blood. Yeah. There we go.
So, it is kind of weird. I know there's a lot of speculation before it came out. Like, is this related to Youngblood? Is this, something that, is just like a placeholder title that's actually going to be a different book? But no, it looks like they're essentially starting towards the middle or end of a run. And then we're going to get it rewound at some point, so we'll be able to see the 1 through 16.
And a surprise solicit, so you have to get it from your local comic shops.
Exactly. Yeah. Similar to what they did with Oblivion Song and Die 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 years ago, or a couple of years ago when it started. Die 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 was a massive surprise. Only people who had pre-ordered Oblivion Song were getting it. And then Oblivion Song itself was, again, it was tied to Walking Dead orders. So Kirkman's just been trying to, I guess, play with this thing where it's like, hey, if you already were reading my books, good. Well, here's some more books for you to read. And if you're not, guess what? You're going to have to deal with the speculators.
And for that matter, Walking Dead's end was also an out of left field surprise. Yeah.
He likes those surprises. Not that everybody likes the surprises. Retailers, not so much.
Okay, so we probably should start talking about some comic books that we're reading. Do as I always do, start with Steve. Steve, what's something you're reading that you're digging?
Well, it's funny that you should mention, the upcoming Nightwing and Batgirl or Oracle series, Barbara Gordon series, because the book I'm going to be talking about ties into it very directly. And it's Dark Knight's Death Metal, The Last Stories of the DC Universe. And for those of you who've been following along and reading Death Metal, like I have, like I know, Bill, you have, it's been very uneven. There's so many tie-ins to it, lots of one-shots. That's, for the most part, actually, I've been enjoying more than the core event book. So... it's been really hard to gauge whether I like it, whether I don't like it, or whether I'm just kind of counting down the days until it's over. This was the first book that came out of it that I was like, you know what? You have to read it. If you're doing anything with death metal, pick this book up. Because it is a breath in the action. It's a pause going into the last 2 issues, which come out this month. The issue 6 and 7 of Death Metal. But this is just a series of stories done by some amazing creators about a period of time, or right before going into the final battle. And it gives the characters a chance to pause, to reflect, and to think about things. They're all think pieces, essentially, where the characters get to talk about themselves and talk about the relationship to others, because that's extremely important going into this, and kind of reminding us exactly why we care about these characters, why we're rooting for them to win, because unfortunately death metal's been kind of problematic in that half the characters are like, oh, so they were twisted, became evil, but they're kind of not evil, and they're kind of just, the world's destroyed and everybody's lost hope, so why do we care whether they survive or not? This kind of takes all that back. And I mean, just going down the list of the creators on here, all doing short stories. Lemire is on here writing Green Lantern with Raphael Albuquerque on art. You've got Mariko Tamaki writing Wonder Woman with Dave Sempore on art. Gail Simone does a Green Arrow and Black Canary story where they actually encounter their daughter from another from another universe, from another world. I think Earth 46 or something. Megan Hetrick on art duties, and she does a really great job there. Chris Sebela doing Aquaman, and it's a very slow Aquaman just touring the seas kind of think piece. And Chris Mooneyham on art, and the Chris's together I think work really well. You get sort of a very sketchy view of the underwater, and the way that Sabella does the story with Aquaman, it's Aquaman's thoughts, but it's written out as if it's like a journal entry or a letter to the others, why he's kind of stepping back and going to spend time with his family. Cecil Castellucci is doing the Bat Family story with Mirko Andolfo on art duties, and this is the one that famously has Nightwing and Batgirl getting married. Batman actually marries the two of them, and apparently in the in the coming series, marriage might have actually stuck, so it might actually have some legs. Who knows? Mark Waid writes Superman, and this was the kind of surprise. I think most people were thinking that Mark Waid would continue writing Superman next year. But this story with Francis Manapul on art is beautiful. It's what if Superman had a watch that allowed him to go back in time an hour at a time. And so he keeps rewinding, saving as many people as he can, righting as many wrongs as he can in this broken, death metal world until the watch dissolves. And it's just great, seeing that brought back, childhood memories of the Superman movie, but also just, the fact that he was doing it, and with his last moments, he can go back and spend some time with Lois and John. And then, of course, the entire death metal writing squad takes turns on the bookend story, which is about the Titans, all of them. And I think Travis Moore has a lot of work to do as the artist, but he also probably has the most fun, because he pulled up every Titan who's ever tightened since the 60s. He brought everybody back. And, there are parts where Titans are talking to each other and you see their original, when they first got together, what they used to look like good old Aqualad and Wonder Girl when she had the whole just everybody is in it. And even some characters I had forgotten from New 52 that I completely out of my head, I totally forgot they were there. Just fantastic.
What like Bunker and
Bunker,
Skitter or whatever.
They actually oh gosh, and I can't remember her name now, but she was kind of like Solstice, who ended up getting killed sort of towards the end of the Teen Titans run in New 52. She makes an appearance in there in sort of like flashback, sort of portrait of what this team looked like. But I mean, it's fantastic. And you have a Wally and a Roy moment, which I was not expecting. It's a very interesting moment. It's a great pause, and really Travis Moore really, does the heavy lifting there as the artist. And I think that's this book. I loved it. I really recommend that you all read it. Get it for the great art, the great creators, writer's story. It's It's fun. It's wonderful.
There's a page with the Titans, and it's Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner, right?
Yep.
Wow, I haven't said those two words in a while. He's borrowing Dick's ass. It's quite a nice. I don't know if you can. It's not going to translate. I would screen share, but I don't think it works. So I read this actually just a bit ago. Bill, did you read this?
Yeah.
No, it's going to be in my next box.
Thank you, Steve.
Right there. Well, I'll get to the ass thing.
Yeah, you go back to the good.
Show
us the goods.
I'll get to the goods. But I wanted to say this because this actually had me tear up a little bit, because this is Donna forgiving Wally. And, the fact that maybe he doesn't deserve forgiveness, maybe he does, in this world, it's just...
This book is all... there you go. Yeah. I mean, it's black. It's hard to see. Anyway, all I'm saying is they did a nice job.
Yeah.
This book is such an emotionally manipulative...
It is.
Calm before the storm.
Yeah.
Treading water. The Superman story is great. I did really love that one. The Wonder Woman story is pretty good. The whole thing. I don't know what this archetype or this trope is, but it's that we're about to go into battle. We're saying our goodbyes, but we're also sort of saying what we never have been able to say, or having these revelations. I did really like the Ollie Queen and Black Canary. That was good. So it's what you might want in this world that we're in, with 2020 still looming large, even though it's about to leave us, hopefully, and leave its legacy behind. It's a warm blanket book. It's a really good hug. If you're a DC fan, none of it is going to matter. Although maybe because of the thing now that everything matters, that's a whole other discussion I want to maybe have.
Yeah.
But it's what you need. It's not the book that maybe you would want. You would kind of want more action because it's comics, but it's the book you probably just needed to feel good.
And I think it's a comic that. With an event like this, where everything's just like, everything's going to be terrible, everybody's dying, every bit of hope gets snuffed out every issue, it's definitely the break that you needed in the storytelling. But I think we also needed it from DC as a whole, because it's been a rough year. It's been a really rough year for DC. And getting to see the characters that we love in a very introspective way, reminded me why I really enjoy them, why their stories are important to me, why the relationships are important to me. And I think they did a great job. I wish the rest of the event that it ties into was all that good. But I loved it, and I loved the Titans moments that we got to see.
Cool.
Bill, have you read this yet?
No, it didn't make my last box.
Oh,
the books from December 8th didn't make the last box. The books from December 1st did.
Yeah.
So it'll be in the next one, and I've only heard good things. I think it's worth mentioning that with Mark Waid, apart from one inventory story, the Batman in Barcelona one shot, this is his first DC work in 9 years, I think. So. That's a change, given some of the personality disputes that prevented him from doing work there for a long time. And it seems, just going from what you've been talking about with Titans here, that's going to tie in with a book that I'm going to be talking about. So,
Yay.
Okay.
Oh, and hi, Mr. Jay Yaspa.
Oh, hi, Jay. Hi, man.
Hi, man. Yes.
Yeah. All right, I guess we can throw it over to Bryan. Bryan, what's something you're reading that you're digging?
I don't know, man. This is tough because I read a bunch of stuff very, very quickly and recently because I was trying to catch up. I finished Green Lantern. Let's just start with that.
Okay.
The Grant Morrison Green Lantern. And, I love Grant Morrison. I think anyone who's ever heard me talk about comics knows I'm in the tank for Grant. And even if it's not successful, I still enjoy the journey. It's kind of how I feel about Green Lantern. I think this is over. I think. I feel like it's over. It ends in a weird way, and I want to talk about that. And I'm going to say spoilers because obviously I think it doesn't matter, or they're going to undo it so quickly. They've already undone what it does. I don't know. Did you hear about how this series ends?
No, I haven't.
Not yet.
Let me just. I don't think it's going to show up well, but maybe. Does that look? You see that? So basically, that's Hal Jordan, dead, and looking like the Spectre.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, huh, interesting. And it's a joke. I mean, it's not a joke that he dies, but it's a joke because the new Guardians are there, like, kind of harassing him. Like, what do they say? You can't say we didn't warn you, Lantern Jordan, but you have a reputation for not listening to maintain, don't you? How does it feel to be dead? And then Hal Jordan's like, again? And then it ends. It just ends. I've talked about this book before. I think a lot of the early stuff that they did was really interesting and different. Like, Morrison was trying to tell this very not space opera, but space procedural kind of, but in a very 2000 AD-esque way with his choice of artists, Liam Sharp, and I'm gonna find the other gentleman's name, but yeah, like trying to really give it a very unfamiliar tone, and I like that. I also love what he did with these Black Star characters. And that like culminated sort of early in season 2. So this is the end of season 2 of the 2-season run. And like that was a really epic thing that kind of culminated and ended. And then we got this whole New Guardians arc that was kind of fine. He got sent back to Earth at one point to sort of be Earth's lantern, even though Earth already has a bunch of lanterns, so whatever. And that's fine. Like little one-off adventures. But the last couple like just go way off the rails, and I don't understand what Morrison's like point was, where he was going. I think if he had ended with the Black Star arc, that would have been successful. I think people would have been like, yeah, okay, cool. I like what you did there. That's cool. But that he kept going and sort of a structure of it doesn't. I mean, maybe there's a structure here that I am not smart enough to understand. That is entirely possible with Grant Morrison. But, the art is spectacular. There's sort of a cowardly lion character. I feel like a lot of this needs to be annotated because it's like digging way back into classic Green Lantern lore.
Yeah.
And we're talking obscure stuff like he did with Batman, like the Green Lantern equivalent of the Batman of Zur-En-Ah, like that, and like I said, the art is just phenomenal. Like I can't really show you very well on here, but I just wish I understood what it was doing. And again, like he kills Hal off at the end, so what happens? But if you like trippy space Morrison or Green Lantern and Hal Jordan's version of that, and kind of like that swagger that he has in some of his incarnations, and kind of like that procedural sort of, not really. There's not a lot of police process other than occasionally saying something like, bring him in, or like it's very a light touch with the procedural. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious if you guys do read this. If you find it,
yeah, I have been reading it naturally, and I don't feel like he stuck to the landing. It felt like, even though I wasn't as crazy about some of the Death Star, some of the Black Star stuff that you really liked, Bryan, it just felt like unnecessarily bleak to me. And the really frustrating thing is, you mentioned that for a time he's back on Earth, and there's one issue which I think is an annual where he's back for a Jordan family party, and again his cousin, who's also named Hal Jordan, is Airwave, and that issue is like so much head and shoulders better than the rest of the series because it gets Hal. It gets the the playboy aspect of him, but also he's like basically like the best cop in the world. On the planet, maybe because that's because of the role that he has with the Guardians. I do feel that there was a lot of missed opportunities. Like one character I really wish that they had incorporated was Alan Scott, because the links between Alan Scott and the Guardians have always been tenuous, and that definition is been malleable, but I do think like Morrison would have tied it together really beautifully somehow. So that's one character I wish we had seen, and I wish we had also had like a really good Lantern Corps issue in there.
Yeah, there's like a couple scenes on Oa.
Yeah,
that kind of touch on it,
but that feels more bureaucratic than action.
True,
and I gotta say, like, I went in very excited about Liam Sharp on art. I was thinking for the second arc, maybe he shouldn't have been him.
Yeah, it doesn't always work well. In fact, there's one where his style changes so dramatically.
Yeah,
and then but it's inconsistent in that whole issue, and it doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason. I don't know. I want to like it, I really do, but I think if I had to speculate, Morrison probably's heart isn't in this as much as it used to be. I think that's kind of why he's stepping back from comics, at least from DC.
Yeah, well, he initially was supposed to do like 1 year, and then he said he had additional ideas, and that's where he had the 3-issue miniseries, and then this one, and maybe those issues weren't as cohesive.
I mean, so this would have been a situation where maybe he should have planned for season 3. Like, I mean, a lot of times the second part of a planned trilogy is sometimes can either be the best or can be kind of like the lull. So if he had been planning for a season 3, then maybe what happens in this one could be forgiven or tied up or clarified in the third season. But if he's not planning on finishing it anytime soon, he just kind of like left it like, okay, I'm done, Hal dead, I don't know, whatever, and then
No, right. It's an odd arc. Jay said, asked if the source wall is still a thing in the Lantern universe.
Nope,
Jay.
Gone. It's destroyed.
That's
why we have to deal with all this shit in the past couple of years.
Death metal, fucking the
Dark
moment.
Propecia,
yeah.
Propecia taking over the goddamn universe.
That kid who laughs a lot,
Yeah. It blowed up real good. Yeah.
Batman and Propecia totally ruining things. Yeah. No,
Perpetua, not Propecia.
I know. But I love
it. That's me.
Propecia. There you go. Wow.
So I will be wrapping that up. I do have the next to last issue over there and just haven't gotten to it yet, but at the same token, Morrison that misses the mark is still 100 times more interesting than 95% of the writers out there that do hit the landing. So
that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I just want people to know that it exists, because it's very easy to overlook. I don't know that it was ever at the forefront of anybody's like conversations, other than maybe here and a few other random podcasts. But it's a journey. And again, if you like 2000 AD, if you like that style, that sort of more, I guess, European Mobius derived, I don't know. I feel like you might enjoy it. So what is Caleb saying here? Sharp was the person who brought me to the GL dance, and season 1 felt really special, but I couldn't find the connection to the second season. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. After the Dark Star, see, the Black Star thing, like, I got what it was an arc. It made sense. It was a little bit of a Hail Mary. We got, but it was the such and such all along. But at the same time, at least it made sense, and it works. And then you're like, all right, now we're done. And that's a perfect moment to walk away. But then, I guess, no, I've got more ideas. Well,
do you?
Do you though?
Do you now?
Do you really?
Do you now?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am gonna take up the baton at this point, and it turns out we have a DC hat trick for the current books that we're talking about.
Is this the first time that all three of us have talked about DC books in a long time?
Yeah, in a long time, and especially since we didn't talk amongst each other about this at all. Yeah, so
we didn't coordinate these.
Yeah, because for people listening, sometimes we're very specific about what books we're talking about, and then other times we're like, oh, we'll just find out when we do it. So, as Steve had mentioned earlier, 2020 is a very definite endpoint for a lot of DC books, and with the way that I purchase and consume and read my books, I'm usually a month behind for the way that things ship for me, but I save hundreds and thousands of dollars. And the books in November found 4 that were entering their final issue. I'm just going to go through them very quickly because there's things to talk about with each of them, but I'll be concentrating on one. First, we had the final issue of Metal Men, and this also served as Dan DiDio's farewell to DC. And there's a really sweet meta moment in the last issue. Metal Men, never been a big favorite of mine. There were some interesting things through the series that we do have an nth Metal Man, and he actually has his own universe, and it's a really convoluted plot. And there's a metal dog too. Oh God, New Jersey, how bad was that dog? But there's a very sweet meta moment in that with Sean Davis on art. So final issue of the Metal Men limited series. The accelerated final issue of Suicide Squad, written by Tom Taylor with art by, what's this gentleman's name? I know the last name is Redondo. Bruno Redondo. And with this iteration of Suicide Squad, there were a ton of new characters that Tom Taylor had created for the book that appears that they are going to have an afterlife as the Revolutionaries. So I wouldn't be surprised if you do see a miniseries or something along those lines. The only stalwarts that we had in the book from the previous iterations of the Suicide Squad were Deathstroke and Harley Quinn. Doesn't end well for Deathstroke. Deathstroke. Deadshot. I do that all the time. I always say that. But it's interesting. With Deadshot, I always say Deathstroke. But with Deathstroke, I always say Deathstroke. I don't know where that comes from. Brief appearances by Ted Cord. Brief appearance by Boomerang. With an explanation of why he's not part of this. But interesting eco-terror, political undercurrent version of Suicide Squad, and was initially supposed to go to 12 issues. They wrapped things up a little bit early, but it doesn't feel like that that accelerated an end, at least as reading it. So Suicide Squad, I wouldn't be surprised if you see these characters in their own book under a different title, as I had mentioned before. The final issue of Teen Titans. This iteration of Teen Titans was not a favorite of mine. I just Roundhouse and I just don't really cotton to these characters too much. But we do have a nice resolution to the end of it, and we do see some very familiar Titans at the end, which seems to tie into the short story that you had mentioned, Steve, and will be tying into a new series coming out next year called Teen Titans Academy, where I presume it's going to follow the trope that's happened 1 or 2 times before of the older Titans training the newer Titans. I imagine that's what's happening, and that's why we have a classic Titans lineup on that final page. But the one I really wanted to talk to was the final issue of Hawkman. Hawkman, written by Robert Venditti, with most of the art by Adrian Passerin. Is that his name? Fernando Passerin. Sorry about that. We have a resolution to Hawkman's literally time-spanning tale here, and some interesting developments for Hawkman and Hawkgirl. I don't want to spoil things, but their continuance of existence is in place, but there's some changes to what will be happening to them in the future, and we do see their future, which is a really nice way to end the book. We do have a glimpse of what the 40th century is like with them, and again, the art through this series. I mean, look at this double page. Look at that. I mean, just some beautiful artwork, a really interesting character take on the various different versions of Carter Hall, and a series I'm really going to be missing because I thought Venditti nailed this particular book. And last issue is number 29, and of all the series that I talked about, this is the one I most highly recommend, both as a final issue and as a series. So goodbye, Hawkman.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you on Hawkman. I think I've never really cared for the character as much, especially not as like a solo book character. I've read Hawk World. I've read other books where he's been a part of teams and things. But this was from issue number 1 was just a riveting story. I think Hawkman, just like Donna Troy, has had the craziest continuity history ever. I mean, they kept the whole fact that he gets reincarnated didn't explain all the different Hawkmen that were showing up at the same time. So, but this book, Venditti did such a great job of tying all that together, where all of that happens and has happened and will continue to happen, and what that means for the character of Carter Hall and how that all ties together in his psyche and shared experience, and bringing in Hawkwoman, the Hawkwoman from Hawk World. That I think was pretty interesting as well. And all the tie-ins with You're the Villain and all of that. I think of all the other books that had to deal with that event, I think this one did such a great job on it because it had a life outside of that event. In a way that made sense.
Yeah, and something you just said, Steve, about him being a continuity nightmare. Mm-hmm. I love that this book took the approach. Yes, he's a continuity nightmare. Here's why. Here's a valid reason why we can have that. And introduction of I absolutely love the arc of the Kryptonian Carter Hall. I absolutely love that arc, and that's a character I really hope we see again in some context.
Yeah.
Because there was so much nuance to injecting a version of Hawkman into that story. It was really well done, and even if Bendis had followed up on something with that, I thought that would have been interesting, since he did spend so much time with the L's. And I know, Bryan, you were reading this book for a time, right?
I was interested because I like the author a lot. I just don't. I don't know. Hawkman is something I just kind of. But you guys have said some good things, so I might check it out after the fact.
Yeah, maybe you'll feel the same way that I did. Like I've always been kind of like, Hawkman, but this book, it's great.
Yeah. And works some really interesting twists into his storyline. He was not a noble person, and that actually sets him off on his journey. And that's one of the most interesting things I think that's been applied to the character, and was, confused me for a little bit, but then he tied up all the ends in it. And it really worked. Okay.
Well, I think, didn't he also, and part of that too, change the history of their reincarnation, where actually it predates, or his reincarnation predates, Khufu and all of that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. If Caleb is on the chat, Caleb, can you just chime in with what book you would have been talking about if you were here?
Well, we're waiting for that. Looks like Jay has left us, so he's going to be finishing on the podcast, on the audio version. But yeah, it's funny that we all talked about DC books. Again, we didn't really mention what we were talking about book-wise prior. I think this is really the first time that we've all talked about DC, because we both have, like all three of us have way different, books that we focus on every week. I know, we've been doing X-Men a lot. We've been, I know, Bill, you do a lot of DC, and I try to do as much indie as possible, but somehow we all kind of aligned with the same publisher, which is great.
So, and I love Brian. DC. Don't ever think that because I talk about X books and, I love DC. But can I just, can we talk about death metal? Because we kind of have alluded to it. Steve, have you read issue 6 yet?
I haven't read 6 yet. I'm picking it up tomorrow. But
so I won't say anything that happens because I don't even honestly couldn't tell you what happens. It's such a fucking mess. There is one beat with Wonder Woman that I actually like a little bit, but what the hell is going on? I know that the whole universe, multiverse, metaverse, all the verse, it's all collapsed. It's all a big mess. Propecia is on the rise. The boy who wouldn't stop laughing. The angry child is a big shadow monster. Yeah, he's gonna throw away all the toys. I just don't know. Batman's dead, evidently, but he's got a black.
He's been dead.
He's got a Black Lantern ring. When did he die? Yeah. When did Batman die? Is this something that happened?
So much happened off camera before issue 1 of Death Metal. It was all like, oh, by the way, this is the world now. Deal with it. There was no. I get it. I get what they were trying to do, but what happened in Dark Knights, was fantastic. I think it was great dealing with that. That sort of secret history of the multiverse. With Barbados and the World Forge and all that stuff. I think they brought in so many really cool ideas. And this is just sort of
they took Morrison's stuff that he added in Final Crisis and Multiversity, and they just and I like Scott Snyder a lot, and I hate saying it's bad because I like him and I think he likes Morrison, so I just don't think it's good. It's muddled.
I mean, my feeling was the original metal was literally heavy metal. It was stupid and fun.
Yeah.
It was,
This one, I mean, if DC Direct was still around, I could completely see a justification of just this series exists to have variant action figures. And alternative designs. The storyline, just like what went on with the Legion of Doom in Justice League, is remarkably hard to follow. There are things that take forever to happen, and then there's other things that should be a full issue in and of themselves that take place in 6 panels. It feels so disjointed, and I think you would give a lot of leeway to it if it was fun. But it doesn't feel.
It starts out
bleak
fun,
and
it starts out zany. It starts out, and I like those moments. But it's zany with doom and dark and horror.
Yeah,
it's a weird pairing that I don't think works with DC.
Yeah, it just it's missing the mark. It's just not working. And I'll just be so happy when this is all done. And just retire the man the dude who laughs for just give us 2 years without him, please.
It's people are sick of Batman. It's like a meta joke about how people are sick of Batman. That's now how we're gonna feel about the Batman who laughs or
whatever. Also the Batman who laughs is such an amazing character, but he has been done and overdone.
You have to be judicious about
Give him a break. I mean, even Dr. Doom, Marvel overdid Dr. Doom at one point, and then they put him away for 5 years, and you didn't see him. So
the Batman Who Laughs is a great idea, and yes, I think there's good stuff there, but turning him into the big bad, it's Bruce Wayne, it's Batman. I get that it's a different Batman, it's a different Bruce Wayne who had different things happen, made different choices, but making him into this metaverse killer thing that wants to just destroy it's too much. It's too much. I don't know. No. I'm just glad to hear that it's not just me, that I'm not missing something. When this is over, I mean, I'm assuming like that's why a lot of books are ending. They're going to kind of do all right, now we're back. And from what I'm seeing is everything matters, which is good. I'm fine with that. But it's sort of wiping away the vestiges of the New 52 and all the permutations we've had since, and just going, you know what? It's all true. All of it. Just take all of it, and that's fine.
Which I think is fine as a temporary measure, of telling stories. And, there may be tropes that, were an offshoot of Final Crisis. There may be an offshoot of Legends. There may be an offshoot of something else. And just give it a little time to gel and then come up with a cohesive history. Of things that make sense. I mean, it was, one of the, I don't want to talk about New 52, but the jettisoning of certain histories I thought was detrimental to the DC universe as a whole. If you're going to do that, don't have two books that take place in the past and the rest in the present day. Everything's got to be, no, seriously, everything's got to be on a level playing field. I think it's an interesting way to tackle it, but I do think it should be viewed as a temporary measure, because some of DC's beauty is the continuity,
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think with the end state of this, and they're doing future state and all that stuff, is like, I guess, sort of a palate cleanser. And this was the 5G that didn't happen, all that, whatever. But like, I think going forward, the beauty of this is all of the continuity that we know, all of the rich storytelling. It's like Marvel to some extent. You can always like bring it back and make it relevant and ignore the parts you don't care. And so I think a lot of the New 52 would just kind of be ignored, and the writers will cling back to the original long continuity.
I mean, I think out of all the developments that happen in New 52, I think there are two things that will stick. One are the Talons and the Court of Owls, and two is the development with Wonder Woman. And
with Wonder Woman, the New Guardians, or the different Lantern Corps that kind of came out of that had started prior to New 52.
I don't see that as a New 52 concept at all. I mean, that was, they basically had well before.
It was going to happen anyway. Same thing. I think the Court of Owls probably would have happened anyway too, because Batman was another book where it's just sort of like, it's New 52, but other than a few like really weird year choices, like
5 years. It's only been 5 years, and you've got all these Robins.
I got all these Robins. I don't know, whatever, man. They just multiply.
4 months and you're out.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, I'm going to train you real hard. You're going to do all these things, and then you're going to go. But I think one of the things with this is that, if you recall, post-Crisis, you had New Earth. So everything was just one big Earth. All of the different, all the different Elseworlds were just one big Earth. This is going to be kind of that same shakeup, I think, where they're just collapsing everything down to a single Earth, or going back to the pre-Crisis days of like, whatever Earth you want, it's all out there. Not just 52, not just, whatever, some arbitrary number. We're just going to have a million billion different Earths, and it's fine. And in that case, all continuity matters, because you could just say, oh, well, it happened on like this other version of Earth. Not necessarily Earth 42 or Earth 56. It could just be Earth 5,436,000. That's what Marvel does.
Or just don't care. Like, just let it ride. Refer to it. It happened, and move on. Like, don't be a slave to the continuity so much that it complicates. And I think Marvel does a better job of this, whereas DC has to do the Crisis thing every so often to make it work.
That was
anyway.
It's interesting with Marvel that we can just accept that characters like Spider-Man or Wolverine never sleep, with how much they do,
and get along with so many different teams.
I think because Marvel set very simple rules, that it was, one of the concepts is it's been 11 years since the Fantastic Four gained their powers. That's been a constant. And when there is something that just doesn't work or doesn't fit, they just find a way to retcon it. I don't know. I think because DC is the original shared universe, that, at least as far as comics are concerned, that they do place a little more importance on a cohesive continuity. And like I said, I think that, sometimes the rigid continuity is what makes some stuff so fun. Like, oh, that can't be the Superman of Earth 1. It has to be Earth 2 because when it happened, there's kind of joy in that too, So at least for me, there is. So.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Caleb might have disappeared into the ether. So did you want to start talking about? Oh no! Did you want to talk about our favorite book?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But before we do that, let's do something where we show what we're wearing, which has become a fan favorite, as Jack Taylor would say. So, Steve, what have you got on?
Well, like I was telling you guys before, you could say that I'm wearing this particular sweatshirt because a certain massive AAA game that's been around for 10 years is now on Xbox Game Pass. But it's just because I really like this one. But it's the Arrow to the Knee. If you're a gamer, you probably heard about it at some point over the past 10 years. So I just really enjoy the shirt. And it also glows in the dark, which is also fun at night.
Okay, cool. Bryan, how about you, apart from our gorgeous hats?
I mean, the hat, the beard, the hat was entirely your fault. When I saw you with that hat, and I was like, I got the beard, I got to pull the Santa thing. But
the ornaments, the beardments.
This shirt is from an event that my ex, Pat, from Bears in the City used to do. And we had a game night last night. He does it every Wednesday night. He does like a Jackbox game night. And, it just got me thinking about the last, 6-7 years that he's been doing this event and how he raised so much money and gave so many toys to children and all this stuff. And it was when he was running Bears in the City down in Orlando for the Parliament House. And then this year, Bears in the City kind of is still a thing, but he's in Chicago now. So he's not doing bar promotions because bars aren't really open. And Parliament's gone. So, it's just like I wanted to draw attention and kind of remind myself that a very Merry Christmas. We had musicians from all over Orlando come. It was such a great event. So anyway, I just thinking about it this year.
Okay, cool. So I have a Charlie Brown Christmas shirt on.
Yay!
Hoping you can all see that there.
Doing my little Charlie Down Snoopy dance.
The classic holiday special. And if you can see back here, something that's become a tradition is me decorating the CD Rex with stockings. So Wonder Woman's over there. If I tilt my head this way, you can see more of the Justice League and Batman, some kind of kitty cat and Star Wars. And if I can pan over here, if you see that Santa Claus at the end there, that is a stocking that I have had since at least 1972.
Wow.
So, and then nice. Way over there, there's a fully stocked stuffing for Rob.
Oh.
And he kind of freaked out when I said, I told him there's 15 things in there. He's like, oh, I guess I got to go shopping. Might be good what I'm getting there. So, all right. So we're rounding out 2020. Goodbye to this motherfucker. And that doesn't mean that there weren't great comics. So I'll start with Steve. Steve, what was your favorite comic series of 2020?
So this was a tough one. Even with the pandemic really taking a huge bite out of what was being put out this year, we had a huge gap where publishers just shut down. Nobody was getting new comics, and we kind of had to make do for a couple of months with nothing new. But there was some great stuff that came out that I massively enjoyed. Firepower. Far Sector continued. Ludocrats was incredible. Spy Island made me laugh hysterically for the 4-issue run. Faithless came back with Faithless 2. Lots of great looking smut. And there were some other great, wonderful books. Grumble, Memphis, and Into the Beyond. But the number one thing that I kept coming back to was a DC Black Label book. And Black Label, of course, is relatively new in the past couple of years, really taking the place of Vertigo and pretty much everything else. But they've been putting out some pretty amazing stuff, and none more amazing, in my opinion, than Wonder Woman Dead Earth. And the entire 4-part series did come out this year, and I was hooked from the moment I read page 1. Daniel Warren Johnson, who we just talked about a little bit earlier today, who's going to be doing a Beta Ray Bill book next year for Marvel. This is basically a magnum opus of a Wonder Woman story. I was so blown away by the storytelling, by the artwork, which is not traditionally what you would associate with Wonder Woman. In this book, she is, I wouldn't say ugly, but she is not this beautiful, pristine goddess that you see pretty much everywhere else. She is dirty. She is scraped up. She's angry. And just the colors that Mike Spicer provides for it, it's, grays and browns and oranges and just really dark and gritty of a post-apocalyptic book. And I know I've talked about this before. I think I brought way back, earlier this year, I talked about the first issue, but the work that Daniel Warren Johnson put into this book was so worth every page that I poured through. Splash pages were gorgeous, and with the larger format, you had much larger. There's a much larger canvas to work on, and you had some incredible action scenes, some just horribly brutal stuff. I mean, there's a part where Wonder Woman is fighting against a horde of mutated Amazons using the skull and spine of Superman infused with her lasso as basically like a ball and chain whip. It's incredible. This is what death metal should have been. This is what Dark Knight's death metal aspires to be and just can't meet it. And this is only 4 issues long, and you get this entire story. It's heavy. There's tons of stuff. It's dark. It's painful to read and very emotional in parts. But this right here, number 1 book of 2020, doesn't get any better than this for me. So,
okay, I am not in the camp that was overly enthusiastic about this book. Mm-hmm. It seemed to be a book I appreciated more than I enjoyed, and I understand where you're coming from. It just didn't connect me in the ways that it did with you. I think he's a major talent, but I also feel like we've had enough bleak Wonder Woman stories lately, and this one's certainly better than some others, but it just didn't resonate with me in the way that I wish it did. I definitely appreciated it, but as I said, it was not a book I enjoyed. So
yeah, I think it is it's a pretty interesting take on it. And if you've been reading a lot of bleak Wonder Woman, this probably isn't for you if you're kind of sick of it. But if you haven't read any bleak Wonder Woman, read this bleak Wonder Woman. Don't read any other ones. Okay. Read this one, because this is like Wonder Woman at her most vulnerable and also at her strongest. And I think that this it puts the whole warrior for love and justice into perspective.
I did like the supporting characters, though.
Yeah, some good supporting characters.
Like that. I did like the ones that came into her world and what they did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
well, an interesting version of Cheetah. Yeah. Really interesting version of Cheetah that we haven't seen before. So, yeah.
All right, over to Bryan. Bryan, what was your favorite book of 2020?
This is so tough. I was actually debating up until the very last minute, because there's so many good books that I haven't even kept up with comics as much as I used to. But I just kept up Rorschach. Issue 3 came out. Rorschach's an amazing series, but it's only 3 issues. I don't know if that's fair to say it's the best of 2020. Strange Adventures, also by Tom King. Great book, interesting, and it's not done yet. There's still one more issue at least. So, good. I highly recommend it. The X-Men, House of X. I mean, I've talked about House of X. I've talked about Dawn of X. I've talked about all the X books. Ten of Swords. We've talked about that to death. Great stuff. best of 2020 in some ways, yeah, but not what I want to focus on. I feel like the thing that I've been most impressed by, and it's Marvel, it's Donny Cates, and it's his work on Thor, which I love. Jason Aaron's, even though I can't remember his name sometimes, I love his Thor run. It's amazing and magical. It doesn't always work. There's things that I thought got a little convoluted, but overall, fantastic run. Will stand the test of time. So I thought, oh man, I like Donny Cates, but he is signing up for a hell of a job here, taking over after that. Like, how do you follow that? And he does. He follows it by like going, all right, yeah, that's cool. Thor's Odin now, and ruler of Asgard. But you know what? Doesn't matter. He's going to become the Herald of Galactus, and that's why I like Donny Cates a lot. Is he takes these like very large risks and conceits that in a bygone era it would have been like, oh yeah, okay, of course you're going to do that. But it's been a while since we've done something like that, and Galactus has had some interesting stories over the last 10 years that I've also really liked. But this story with the Black Winter, man, it's a wild ride, and you don't expect what's going to happen. Thor makes some choices, gets into some fights with some of his friends, does some things with and against Galactus that you kind of blows your mind a little bit. You're like, wow, these are bold choices. The other thing I will say, only because this has become my life at night, what I loved about the Thor story is it tied into Fortnite, and it did it in a way that absolutely had relevance, not to the Marvel side necessarily, but to the Fortnite game by taking over in a whole season of the game. About 12 weeks in total, and like coming right out of this Black Winter story, sort of like I think it was between like issues, like, oh, let's go over there, and then they do that, and then hijinks ensue and whatever. So that Donny Cates got to play with some pretty big toys, got to do a really interesting story that set up a lot of what's happening now, even with King in Black, which he's also writing. And that he's getting to tie into Fortnite, which again, if you don't know Fortnite, your kids do, and if you don't have kids, your nieces and nephews do. It's huge. It's the sandbox that a lot of properties are going to be putting their toys in and have already. And so if you think, whatever, it's a video game, it's a big deal. It's a big deal video game. So yeah, I have to give credit to Donny Cates. I don't like everything he does. I don't think everything works. But this Thor story, I was looking back at some of the covers, and that look, that completely just goth metal, death metal in the right way, look that he gave, with, oh man, I'm going to blank on the artist until I look it up. It's just beautiful. It's really, it's bold, and I appreciate that.
Okay, I think the only thing I have from Cates' run, I think I have the digital version of issue 1. But at some point, I'm going to be checking all this stuff out.
I think the artist is Nick Klein.
Okay.
Klein. Okay.
Okay. So this is amazing that of the three of us, the person that's going for an independent book as his favorite book of the year is me. But it's a marquee independent book. I have to say that. And for me, my favorite book of the year was Adventure Man, written by Matt Fraction with art by the Dodsons. This book has everything. Lupin, MTV, Dan Cortez, a doorman that high-fives the children of divorce. Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, it is a book that has everything. Again, it is the story of a pulp character adventure man that basically ended in a huge cliffhanger, and many years later, a woman who owns a bookstore who has an extended family continues that story. That basically is the plateau, the base plateau of what goes on. But seriously, this is a story of legacy and family and reinvention and parenthood and the supernatural, and literally everything is in here. Everything is in here. If you are somebody who is well versed in pulps like Doc Savage, this will hit a lot of your sweet spots. If you've never touched that world before, this is a good way to peek into it. For volume 1, the trade came out last week, I think, December 9th, which collected the first 4 issues, which is their volume 1. I hope we have many, many more after that. That's all we have for right now. But with Matt Fraction, I just want to say, for somebody who's like, at this point, like, how long has Fraction been writing books? About 15 years or so, would you say?
Well, I think
with Casanova.
Since he's stopped working at Heroes, aren't hard to find in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah, it's
about
been
15 years, and for somebody to have such a vibrant voice, and there were other works he did this year too, like Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, which is something completely different. But it's nice to see a writer that hasn't jumped the shark, where you kind of would be getting worried at this particular venture, at this particular junction in time. But this book literally has everything. It's very comic booky without feeling like you're drowning in the comic bookiness of it. That's a terrible way to put it, but I think you all know what I'm talking about. So this is my recommendation. As I said, I'm holding issues 3 and 4. The book is just collected last week, and makes a great gift. So especially to yourself. So that's my recommendation for Book of the Year adventure, man. And Steve, you have been reading, or at least started?
No, not yet. I was waiting for the trade to come out. I mean, when you started talking about, because I'd seen it on the shelf and I was like, whatever. And then you talked about it on the show, and I was like, I guess I gotta pick it up once it's finally done. Because one of the things that was very consistent about it is that pretty much every issue was selling out at my LCS. So even if I did want to pick it off the shelf, it would have been like issue 3, maybe issue 2, and then that's it. Like nothing else would have been available. It was popular.
Okay, cool. So just wanted to send an invite to anybody who's still following, whether it's James or John Runningen or anybody. If you have a favorite book, we'll be happy to let people know on the show here. Also, if you have a particular wolf of the week, we'll be very happy to do that as well.
James did agree somewhat. He's excited about the hardcover for Dead Earth. But with Bill, not too many bleak Wonder Woman stories. He blames Jeff Johns.
Why do you blame Jeff Johns? He's never written Wonder Woman.
I blame the Finches.
Blaming Greg Rucka. Greg Rucka's great on Wonder Woman, but some of the stories have been bleak. Why are you blaming Jeff Johns? He doesn't write Wonder Woman.
Leave Jeff Johns alone. I actually am excited. Isn't Morrison doing more Wonder Woman Earth 2?
Yeah, I just had a pre-order that friggin' $17.99 book. Yeah,
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, you know what? Here we go again. I wasn't crazy about it. I wasn't crazy about Wonder Woman Earth 1. It felt sexless, where it should have been hot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it got the dominant. See, I think it's got the dominance angle in where it needed to, and that's what he was trying to do better with. So sex and dominance aren't the same. So maybe that's where they. I don't know.
All right.
Well, I haven't read Earth 1. I probably will at some point. She's had some really big teams that have worked on her, a lot of big writers that have worked on her. Since obviously, I would say that the biggest misstep of the past several years was when the Finches were on it. And just destroyed Donna Troy and did their worst to just make it unpleasant to read.
If that book didn't have Wonder Woman on the title, I wouldn't have bought it.
Yeah,
I would not have. It was god awful. That was god, and that wasn't Jeff Johns.
No, it wasn't Jeff Johns. But we've got Mariko Tamaki who's writing it now. We've got we just finished with
Steve Orlando.
But then also
G. Willow Wilson.
Yes, G. Willow Wilson as well. So they've had a really great, diverse lineup of writers.
And also before that, Greg Rucka.
Exactly. Who have done some really great stories with her, and like some great had some great ideas, introduced some cool characters, and like played with characters from the sandbox. But I mean, Bleak Wonder Woman, she's had enough bleakness. Like, give her some fun stuff to do, I guess. James. Okay, James is explaining why he said Jeff Johns, because he's responsible for turning the entirety of the DCU into let's make our characters cool by throwing flesh-eating zombies at them.
I so disagree. I mean, there are so many stories that he's been responsible for. Just look to JSA. It's I get the thing. There are miniseries where people get their arms ripped, and the whole Black Lantern thing. That does touch into darkness, but he's not a one-man operation in that aspect, and he's one of the writers who I think is very good at writing heroic characters heroically. So
I mean, he may have done Blackest Night.
I don't buy that argument one bit.
He also was the architect of Brightest Day, so going back that far.
Well, you have to go to darkness to show the contrast with light.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that in Blackest Night's example, that's the whole point. It's to go as dark as you can and kind of go beyond where you think would bringing characters back from the dead in that way was kind of new. Whereas, but then getting to Brightest Day and all the other stuff. But contrast that with Marvel Zombies, which I feel like James is more. But he didn't write that, right? That was who I would credit mostly. Also, Walking Dead maybe a little bit of the zombieification of comics. So I agree with you, Bill. I'm a fan of Jeff Johns' his Rebirth. If that had panned out the way it probably should have. And or if his Watchmen thing had panned out better and worked in better, I feel like that would have been better. What was it called? Clockwork Orange? No.
Doomsday Clock. Doomsday Clockwork.
Doomsday Clock.
Doomsday Clockwork Orange, I think.
Doomsday Clock.
And it's interesting you mentioned Brightest Day. Because again, I get the sequences mixed up, but the very end, I guess, of Blackest Night was one of the situations where a comic book made me cry, and that was when both Hawkman and Hawkgirl are reincarnated, and when Hawkgirl takes off her helmet, she says, "Carter, I'm not Kendra," and we see Shayera. In my car, So I just don't buy this whole thing of all the dark elements for one particular publisher being due to one particular person.
I mean, if you're especially
when that person is very well versed in showing the brightness of particular characters.
If you're gonna go back and blame anybody for darkness in comics, it's Alan Moore and what's his name, Darkest Night. My brain's just not working today.
Gosh,
sorry. What are you talking about?
Like
Watchmen?
Dark Knight Returns.
Dark Knight Returns. Sorry.
With Miller.
Miller. Yeah, Miller and Moore.
I had a thing.
They get the deconstructing comics, showing them as human, fallible people. I mean, that's the original sin there. If you read Morrison's Super Gods, he kind of shows that kind of dialectic that had happened.
Well, the thing is, like Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns that mine those tropes, those are brilliant pieces of work. The big problem was the people that followed up on that weren't as skilled.
Yeah,
that's where things happened in the 90s and got weird. And
so
people like dark shit. Oh yeah, let's throw everything into dark shit. Woo!
So I love James for his out of nowhere, off the wall recommendation for his favorite book. And I only say that because I love Jim Starlin, but he's had a rough ride at times. His Dread Star Omnibus, which I have not read, and I would like to at some point. So
yeah, I've read Dread Star. With the storyline originally starting in Epic Illustrated, and then was its own series. Playing on the notion of religion in a cosmic concept, and some other things. There's wonderful things that happen that just could not happen these days. Like there's one scene in Dread Star where you see people getting off a ship and it's clearly Han Solo and Chewbacca, and you like that can never happen today. Like it just could.
You got to be sneaky. Also, Caleb's back.
Hey, Caleb. Caleb just said Frank Miller.
Thanks for.
When you couldn't think of that. Okay.
The 10-second lag.
That guy.
Everybody's yelling at their screens or their car audio. Dave Abersole joined us, which I love.
And Supergods is amazing. Do you know something? I've never read Supergods because I had the audiobook.
Oh, well.
And I kind of wish I had read it instead of listened to it.
Who narrates
Morrison read it? Because
because that would have been a lot of fun. That would have been Can you imagine like Morrison reading an audiobook?
The sun actually means something a little bit more. It's really good.
Batman and Robin. It's a terrible film, but the colors are great. I mean,
I should have done the entire thing in Scots. I think that would have been even better. Like, hey, you're heed and your teeth. Yeah, that would have been wonderful. I would love that.
Supergods.
Love this book.
Yeah. There was a point where I was like getting every like historical book on audiobook about comics, like Marvel: The Untold Story and the 10-Cent Menace, which if you guys have never sampled, that is a fantastic book about the Wortham and the book burnings and EC Comics. Yeah, the 10-Cent Plague. 10-Cent Plague.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Caleb throw in also Rick Veitch's Brat Pack. Has a lot larger footprint than it's given credit for. I have not read that, but I have heard that from somewhere, maybe from Caleb even. Comics are always evolving. Like any other medium, they're gonna take turns and trends are gonna take hold. And I think Grant Morrison and his era, and Jeff Johns too, brought the light back into a darker place than it had been.
And also some of the people that were responsible for this, acknowledge it. A book that I think is it should be in everybody's shelves, which is like costs a fortune as a trade now, but you can still find the issues for like $1, is a series called Judgment Day that Alan Moore wrote for Rob Liefeld's universe. And he publicly said this is basically an apology for all the crap books that came out after Watchmen. And it takes, what are effectively very basic concepts. It's Liefeld. They're very strong and very colorful, but they're very basic and gives them a huge life. And if you've never read it, I do think it's totally worth reading. Called Judgment Day.
James was also one of the people screaming Frank Miller at his monitor.
Frank Miller!
Everybody, Frank Miller!
All right. Well, we are past the 11 o'clock mark, or I guess for Bryan, you would be past the 8 o'clock mark at this point.
Yep.
So we're going to be wrapping up this episode, the last one of 2020. We will be back next year. Also, over the next 2 weeks, you'll be seeing the last 3 shows in audio form. So if you're driving during the holidays, which you shouldn't be because of COVID, but if you are in a situation where the audio makes sense, those will be available in the next couple of days. But going back to the regular flow of the show, when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him, and we do something similar in this particular context. And this is where we signify something which may be a comic book, but it may also be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that would think you, fair listener, or viewer may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your wolf of the week?
Well, my general wolf is Star Trek Discovery. My God, the past couple of weeks with Emperor Giorgio being the spotlight character, wonderful, really, really wonderful. Big call back to the original series with a surprise cameo, but that was great. My actual wolf of the week is a returning series called The Expanse. And I talk about it every year that a new series comes out, a new season comes out, because it is wonderful. It is a great sci-fi series. It's based on a book series. But since Amazon took it over, they've been able to do things that the Sci-Fi Channel couldn't allow them to do. One, they can swear their asses off, and Avasarala, Shore Agdashalu, as the actress there, can say fuck as much as she wants. I love it. She's fantastic as a character. But I think they're given such a great budget now. They're given a lot of allowances to have longer episodes, tell more story, and really, highlights characters. I was so excited. I watched the first episode of season 5 right now. They do have one more season after this. It may be the last season next year, but they're not 100% sure. It could be shopped around. You never know. But it's wonderful. It's amazing. It's going in directions that I'm glad they're exploring. So The Expanse. Check it out. It's on Amazon Prime in the US and I think other territories as well.
I love this show so much. I'm very excited that the new season is out, though I will consume it very quickly and then be sad.
Yes.
The good news is the way they envision the series is it was always a 6-episode season or series. Six season series. Sorry. A lot of S's. And then if you know the books sort of do a thing narratively that it makes sense that you might go, all right, you know what? This is a good point to stop. There's more story, but you could certainly explore that in other ways at other times. So I think that's kind of what they have in mind. It's like George R. R. Martin. The series could overtake the books relatively quickly if they didn't, take that break. So I'm very happy. It sounds like they're also pleased with the way this all played out. But I also would not be shocked if it did come back in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't watched the show yet. Someday. All right, over to Bryan. Bryan, what is your wolf of the week?
So it's very appropriate that our dear friend Dave Abersole popped in to our chat, slid into our DMs, as the kids like to say. I am very excited for him because his masterpiece Dash, and not just him, of course, but as the writer, it came out, like the full thing is complete, at least this story. The case of I'll say her name wrong, Zita Makara, and we actually did an interview with Dave at least once here, once on Flame On, twice on Flame On. I lose track. They all blend together. But this is a great trade. It's out from Northwest Press. If you want it, it's the whole collection. It's got some great back matter, some great extra illustrations, both by Delia Gable, who started the series and sort of designed the characters with Dave, and Vinny Rico, who kind of picked up the writing or the artist duties for the second half of the series. So I'm thrilled. I just got this. I kickstarted it whenever. And Zan Christensen himself, playing Santa Claus, came to my door yesterday and dropped this off. So very unexpected. And he's like, nice Christmas lights. I'm like, what? Are you here? Anyway, so it was nice. COVID notwithstanding, it was good to see him, even if we could only wave through and smile through our masks. But so this is huge. Dave's also starting his own Patreon, which he has put the link, and I asked him to, down in our chat. So if you're interested in kind of seeing what he's up to on the regular, as they say, you should check this out. And I love supporting friends' Patreons. I now am collecting a bunch of them that are, fairly inexpensive monthly charges, but it helps them continue to create content. And Dave, I know, is going to be also teaching an online course coming up, I believe, in January. So Dave's got a lot of stuff going on, and I am going to be sitting down with him on Monday, this coming, which if you're watching live, great. If you're listening to it, go watch it somewhere. It's on the interwebs. And getting to find out all about this cool stuff. But yeah, I'm really thrilled to see my creative friends making content, finding a way to keep the lights on and do what they love. And so I want to 100% support this this effort. So check out Dave's Patreon and go pick up Dash.
Cool, and I can verify that both Steve and I have our copies through the Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, we got ours.
And I have all the single issues. I have all the single issues as well. I don't know if you do.
I'm kind of missing.
I do actually. I have.
Yeah. As long as you're reading it. As long as you're reading it. Okay. My intended Wolf of the Week was almost something in alignment with Bryan. With DC Universe taking most of its content off from the video content off this as we're recording this actually tomorrow, the 18th. It's tomorrow the 18th.
Yes.
Yeah, the 18th. Yeah, so most of the stuff is going bye tomorrow. I was trying to catch up on some stuff, so I was watching the Superboy series that aired in syndication starting in 1988 through 1992, I guess. So it would have been a 91-92 season. And Bryan, I'm not sure if you know about this, but a good portion of the show was filmed at your alma mater, University of Central Florida.
I was not there because I was still in high school when this came out, but I absolutely found that out after the fact, and I thought that was really cool.
So I thought that was going to be a Wolf of the Week, but some of the episodes are so goddamn bad, that I just couldn't in good conscience. There's a charm to some of them, but there's, you guys know what a clip show is, where they basically do clips from previous episodes and make an episode of.
Hey, remember when?
The most bizarre clip show you ever see with Gilbert Gottfried as a villain named Knick Knack. I mean, there's some just really awful episodes, and some that are, they make do with what they have. So there's a charm to it, but in good conscience, I couldn't recommend it. Though it's a film I've seen before, I really appreciate it much more on a return visit. And the film I'm talking about is a documentary called No Manifestos, a film about the Manic Street Preachers. Manic Street Preachers are one of my favorite groups, but if it's a name that you're unfamiliar with, it's understandable because they've done bupkis in the States. They've never sold records here. And there's actually like a really cool sequence in the show where they're showing the numbers of how many records bands like The Verve and Oasis and Radiohead, during the Britpop and afterwards years. And these numbers are in the millions. And you see the Manic Street Preachers in the U.S. have sold less than 26,000 copies. Nowadays, if you sold 26,000 physical copies, you'd probably have a top 8 record, but we are talking about the late 90s and early 2000s when there was some just incredible money to be made from CD sales. If you're unfamiliar with the group, it tells you everything you need to know about this amazing group. Probably the most notable thing about the group was their original co-lyricist and rhythm guitarist Richie Manic Edwards disappeared in February of 1995, and his body has never been recovered. He has been declared legally dead.
It took 15 years, right, to declare him dead.
Because in the United States it's 7 years. In the United Kingdom, it's 15 unless there's other circumstances like an explosion. It's weird laws. And they've always been one of my favorite bands, and it's also an amazing story because this could have been a situation where the disappearance of Ricky would have, or Richie, sorry, uses both. Could have spelled the end of the band, but they released a record called Everything Must Go when they reconvened after his death, and it basically gave them a whole new lease on life. There's a subwoof in this episode because my favorite record of theirs is an album called The Holy Bible. But another big favorite, though, is Lifeblood, and I'm holding up the copy of this 2004 CD. By the time this came out, they didn't have even enough juice to get a stateside release. So it was a huge commercial bust for them. The previous studio album, Know Your Enemy, debuted at #1 in the United Kingdom. This debuted at number 13 and was gone within 6 weeks. And it's interesting because I just absolutely love this record, and hearing the band talk of their affinity for it, it kind of justifies your interest in it. It's not a big rock album. This is a band that, like, for me, this is what the sound of arena rock should sound like, with songs like Kevin Carter and Design for Life. But this is a much more intimate, much more subtle album. And so it's my subwoof to check out the album Lifeblood, main woof, the documentary No Manifesto is a film about Manic Street Preachers. So
cool.
Yep.
I have seen a documentary about the Manic Street Preachers. I think it was called Escape from History, that dealt specifically with Richie's disappearance. That was like a big part of it, talking about what led to the situation around his disappearance, like what led up to that point, and then what they did after, which is very interesting. So
yeah,
I have it on my Plex, by the way, along with the Manics live at Cardiff Castle. But
yeah. Oh God, this is so good, so good, and like, and it's amazing. Like, it's like so few people outside of the United Kingdom know about them. And they're in my top 5 acts. And as you said with some of their work, I mean, the lyrics are so strong. There's one song called Ocean Spray, which is about the lead singer and guitarist, James Dean Bradfield. His mother passing away from cancer, and her favorite drink was Ocean Spray. And that the lyrics were primarily written by Nicky Wire, who's the bass player in the band, about his friend's mother. It just shows how tight they are, and you definitely get the sense of that through this documentary. I'll talk about the Manics for ages, but it's not happening right now because we got to wrap up. So, anything you guys want to say about saying farewell to 2020 before we wrap up for good?
Bye.
Fuck right off.
Tell your story walking. It's been a rough year in so many ways, but I have to say, I especially thank Bryan for initiating doing these live streams, because it's a little easier to prep for, I think, and it's a little more organic than when we do record an audio only episode. And I'm not thinking like a producer during the whole show. So I'm more relaxed, and I thank you for that. And it's just been great having, this outlet to see you guys every week or every 2 weeks, depending upon the situation.
Yeah, it's been nice.
I'm glad we transitioned to this.
I love that this platform puts us in a, like, so you see the news, like different news channels using the same platform that we're using, StreamYard. And you're like, oh, we do that too. That's so cool. So yeah, I'm glad that this presented itself, and I'm glad that people are stuck at home. They have to watch us.
They have to watch us.
They have no other options.
And if they can't do it when it's live, at least these are archived and you can see us. Or if you just prefer to listen, because there's, believe me, the numbers for audio, completely dwarf the video numbers still at this point. If you're listening, we thank you and hope you continue to do that. I don't know why, because we're all so cute.
Yeah. See our faces. Yay. Love you.
All right, so I guess we can wrap up. And Caleb just chimed in with, "I miss you, fellas." We miss you too, Caleb. We wish you were with us for this episode, but we are bound to the tech gods, and that just wasn't in the cards. I imagine the next time we'll be joining people again will be January 7th, which would be the first Thursday of 2020. So we will see you then. And we certainly hope that everybody has a very safe and happy holiday season. And I don't know if you call it Chris McQuanza hook. I don't know however you want to put it, but happy holidays to everybody. Especially big happy holidays to the people that have consistently been joining us during these live streams. So John and James and David Toby, thank you. Matt Broussard, our old co-host, very often would join us on that. And James just chimed in if you could just put what he put up there. Yeah.
We're glad that we can do this for everyone. It's really fun for us, and that's why I'm glad to hear it's enjoyable because we'd still do this, I think, even if it was nobody here.
Yeah.
It's true. And what James said for the audio listeners here, he says, I just want to thank you guys for the company and the laughs and the nerd talk. This year has been so difficult, and you guys are always something to look forward to in my week. I wish you all a great 2021, and we definitely wish a great 2021 to you too, James, and everybody else who's listening and watching. But like Bryan said, we'd still be doing this every week just because we love talking to each other, love seeing each other. But it makes us extra happy that
you got Bill hot and bothered there, James. Watch out.
All right. Well, again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. If you want to listen to us, please download us through iTunes, listen to us through Stitcher Radio, or catch us on many of the other podcatching platforms. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Lastly, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please leave what we hope is a positive review so we continue to expand our profile on that platform. Until next year, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Bryan Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
If you're listening, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.